Welcome to the Changing Earth podcast with Sarah F. Hathaway, blending survival, fiction, and fact to bring you entertaining education that'll help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sarah F. Hathaway.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Changing Earth podcast. I want to thank you for being here with me today. We get to continue upon Erica's adventure with chapter 5 of Day After Disaster. If you remember last week, she woke up in Henry and Carol's barn. So we're going to see what's happening there, how Henry and Carol are surviving, and how they're planning on moving forward in the future. So it's a lot of fun. Great chapter to hear. After the chapter, we have Kat Ellis here with us. She is the author of Prepper's Natural Medicine, Life-Saving Herbs, Essential Oils and Natural Remedies for When There Is No Doctor. Kat is a very learned herbologist, so I'm very honored to have her on my show. These interviews were a blast to do, so stay tuned after the chapter reading for the interview with her. You're going to want to hear this. So without further ado, let's hear chapter 5, Day After Disaster, by Sarah F. Hathaway. Chapter 5. She fell back into a deep sleep. She dreamt of her tiny home that was white, trimmed with green. She dreamt of her son running through the backyard. The green grass was blowing in the wind. Her son was climbing on his playset. He would zoom down the slide right into the dog, and then the two of them rolled through the lawn. She was lazily working in the flower bed, just enjoying the sunshine and the peace and quiet. Erica heard the wooden gate to the yard close behind her, and her husband walked up. She gazed into his warm eyes and reached out to feel the ripples of his muscular body. She wrapped her arms around him and drank up all the love he could possibly offer. His embrace enveloped her, and she knew she was in heaven. Erica awoke. She almost wished she could have slept forever, so she could just stay wrapped in Vince's love. Realizing that the dream was too real to just be a dream, she knew she had to get home. He was still there. He was trying to reach out to her, just as she was trying to reach out to him. They were soulmates, and they would find one another no matter what. Erica looked around the barn. She was in the hayloft, which was furnished with items that had obviously been salvaged from a home. It was hard to believe it was a barn at all, but the smell of hay and animal reminded her. She slowly sat up. Her body was still sore and scabbed all over from the burn she had sustained. She drew back the blanket, but quickly brought it back up when she realized that she was completely naked. Then she heard the creak of the wooden stairs that led up to the loft. She heard the footsteps come across the barn floor, and then the blanket that was hung as a door to her room was pulled back, and in popped the head of the sweet lady that Erica had talked to before. "Oh dear, you're up. I'm sorry I wasn't here when you woke. You look much better." She entered the room and sat down on a chair next to Erica's bed. "My name is Carol Duncan. And what is your name? Or should I just keep calling you Honey?" Carol asked. Carol was an older lady with gray curls encompassing a round face. She was small in stature and walked stiffly. She had brought a pitcher of water with her. She filled a glass that was next to Erica's bed and put the pitcher down next to it. "My name is Erica. How long have I been asleep?" "2 days since you woke up last." "It's the 4th of July, Carol said cheerfully. "I doubt we'll see any real fireworks today. But seeing you sitting up is fireworks enough for me. You must be feeling much better." "Besides feeling like I've been hit by a truck, I'm not feeling too bad," Erica said, stiffly moving her arms around. "That will pass, honey. I just wish I could do more for you. I'm no doctor, and even if I was, I don't have any medicines left. I don't even have any of my arthritis medicine left. I studied a little about medicine. I was on ski patrol up in Tahoe for a while, and I studied some books on herbs for healing. But when it really comes down to it, I'm no doctor either. I remember some of those herbal remedies, though. Maybe I could get up and find something for you and me." Erica was really anxious to be up and about after sleeping so long. She figured she was a lot closer to home now, and she wanted to know just how close she really was. Looking for healing herbs seemed like a good excuse. Carol was not as convinced as Erica that she was ready to be up and about yet, and quickly countered, I don't know, honey. You're in no shape to be going out yet. Maybe if you could tell me what you need, I could get it for you, and you could show me how to prepare it. Erica was disappointed, but decided that it was probably best to listen to this woman. After all, Erica did owe the couple her life at this point. She replied, That sounds like it'll work. I need a plant called plantain. It's really common in this area and grows in the grass. It looks like really thick blades of grass growing from a singular plant. This time of year, it might have sprouts like flowers coming out of the middle. Also, if you could get me my clothes, I could try to get these legs moving again. Erica tried to slip the last part in real nonchalantly, hoping that Carol would at least let her get out of bed and move around some. Oh, I almost forgot about your clothes. Hold on a second. Carol enthusiastically stood up and left the room. Erica heard her steps across the floor again. They faded away and then returned. Look here, honey. We had to cut your clothes off your skin, and the cellophane you wrapped yourself in melted all over them. You have some more of those cooking clothes with your gear, but I made this outfit out of an extra pair of sheets. They shouldn't irritate your burns as much as those thick cotton cook's clothes. Carol held up a simple outfit and placed it on Erica's bed. Thank you. That's absolutely perfect, Carol. I really have to thank you for all you've done for me. I owe you my life, Erica said sincerely. Oh, nonsense, Carol shrugged the comment off. I'm just glad we could help. Like I told you before, we've been looking for survivors since the quake. But you're the only one we found. I'm the only one? Are you serious? What happened to everyone? Erica was shocked. I don't know. We think that when the water hit the valley, it simply washed everything towards the coastal mountains and the ocean. The volcano that erupted over that way probably covered all of the aftermath, Carol stated with a sad, wondering look in her eyes. I wanted to ask you, Erica, how did you survive that mess? Carol was looking very inquisitively at Erica. Then she shook her head and said, Actually, don't answer that now. You can tell my husband and me at the same time after dinner tonight. That way you don't have to tell your story twice. Now I need to go and find that plant you need before it gets dark. Thanks, Carol. Without the enthusiasm for the outfit that Carol had made for Erica, Erica noticed that Carol rose very stiffly from the rickety wooden chair that had been placed by Erica's bed. Erica was guessing that Carol had watched over her the whole time she had been sleeping. All this talk of medicine and watching Carol's stiff body made Erica remember something from her herb books. Carol, do you have any evening primroses planted in any flower gardens? Erica questioned inquisitively. Why, yes, I do. I have a whole bed. At least I had a whole bed. But some survived. I just love those flowers. Great. If you can find some seeds from them, the oils that they contain can bring you some relief from that arthritis. Also, you can eat the young roots as a vegetable. I'll be darned. Who would have guessed that I have a flower bed full of the medicine I need? Here I've barely been able to walk and bend, and the whole time the medicine was right there, Carol exclaimed, as if completely dumbfounded by this information. I wouldn't say it's an instant cure, or even that it'll work as well as the medicine you used before, but it'll help, Erica countered. Honey, you have made my day. What a joy having you around is going to be, Carol said cheerfully. I can't stay long, Carol. I have to get home to my family. I've already been gone for 2 whole months, Erica said, grimacing with pain as she tried to sit up straighter. I know, honey, but you'll have to heal first. Just relax and concentrate on that. With that, Carol headed down the stairs with 2 empty baskets. Erica picked up the garments Carol had left for her. The shirt was light blue and made of very soft cotton. The collar had a V-slit cut into it with strings so it could be tied shut. The pants were also the same light blue color. The only feature was an elastic band around the waist to hold them in place. Erica pulled the covers back again and threw her legs over the side. Something was poking her in her very sore leg. She looked down and saw that her bed was made of hay bales, with a thick foam pad laid over the top. Then the sheets were put over the top so that it was soft and looked almost like a real bed, until you felt the side. She stood up and slipped her pants on over the sore, scabbed, and blistered skin. Erica thought the pain from the elastic band would be excruciating, but it actually wasn't that bad. That was a good sign, indicating that the wounds were healing quickly, and although she would be pretty scarred, nothing was seriously damaged. She looked down at her bare feet. They were cold, but they were not painful. Erica figured that the shoes she had on had protected them. She strolled across the floor and looked out the window that was located in the kitchen over the sink. The window looked out to the northwest. At one time, it looked out over a wooded area that gradually molded into a valley that contained a city named Sacramento. On a clear day when the smog was not too thick, you could have seen skyscrapers looming in the distance, and the endless shops, people, and cars. Human life and all their creations as far as the eye could see. It was all gone. The forest area now ended abruptly at the edge of a toxic lake occupying what had been the Sacramento Valley. The new toxic beach was about 5 miles west of the barn. The barn that used to be home to just animals stood soundly and had provided Carol and her husband a sanctuary from a world that was turning itself upside down. A tear fell from Erica's eye when she began to think of the hundreds of thousands of people that had died there. Why had she been spared? She was there in the middle of the toxic sludge and made it out. She was alive and in decent condition. Why her and no one else? What am I doing just standing around? I need to get ready to go. All right, so Erica's adventure continues. Will she heal up? How's she going to do? Guess you're just going to have to tune in next week to find out. So in the meantime, I have Kat Ellis here. Now, Kat has a book out. It's called Prepper's Natural Medicine, Life-Saving Herbs, Essential Oils, and Natural Remedies for When There Is No Doctor. Kat's love of herbs began in the late 1990s with simple cold and flu remedies and grew into a full herbal practice, including workshops and private clients. Her herbal practice leans heavily on Western traditional herbalism, European and American herbal traditions. Her husband and her have been preppers officially since 2008, and they were already interested in camping, gardening, beekeeping, and other self-reliant hobbies. A loss of income, however, kicked their interest in preparedness, homesteading, and modern survivalism into high gear. It was probably inevitable that her herbalism would be influenced by a prepper. She has spent a lot of time and effort researching the best options in extreme, last-chance scenarios. As a prepper, this is just being practical. As an herbalist, she is humbled by the power and simplicity of plant-based medicines to address truly serious conditions. She's not a doctor. She cannot diagnose or give medical advice. She's an herbalist, midwifery student, massage therapist, and a prepper. She sees the potential for emergencies where people are cut off from modern facilities and help is just not coming. She sees the potential for scenarios where pharmacies may have nothing but empty shelves. It is her belief that herbalists can fill in some of the gaps in the absence of modern medicine, whether that be from an EMP, a natural disaster that leaves communities stranded for extended periods, an economic collapse causing an interruption in supply, or any other obstacle that puts modern medicine out of a person's reach. Her other related interests, as well as her herbal knowledge, is reflected on her site, www.herbalprepper.com. I'm very honored to have her here today because herbology is one of the topics that I am most passionate about. In 2008, I was having problems with my gallbladder, and they put me on all kinds of medications that made me feel horrible. I threw them out the window, and I found somebody who was into herbology, and we got the problem solved. So welcome to the show, Miss Kat Ellis. I am so honored to have you here today.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me on.
I appreciate it. Like I say, this really is a topic I'm passionate about. I love learning about the natural benefits to the plants that are just all around us. that we could utilize that we have no idea about, basically, because the Western medicine world has kind of shrouded us.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very honored to have you here.
Well, again, thank you for having me on.
In this chapter, episode 5, Erica awakens in Henry and Carol's barn. And this time she's more alert. She's ready to get up and about, but she notices that Carol is moving very slowly. And Carol explains that because of the disaster, she has run out of her arthritis medicine. Now, Kat, I chose the problem of arthritis to discuss because this ailment is a problem that affects a lot of people and would continue to do so in a long-term survival situation. Given your extensive research into the herbal remedies, are there different herbal recommendations for different types of arthritis? And what are some examples, some takeaways that we could use for this?
Well, certainly, because arthritis is one of the most common chronic illnesses that we have in the United States. Chronic illness, actually, the CDC says that reports that 1 in every 2 adults in the United States has a chronic illness. So you have to keep in mind that that's going to be a factor post-disaster. Those aren't just going to go away, and arthritis is one of the top ones. And the 2 most common forms of arthritis are osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. And osteoarthritis is overwhelmingly the most common form. I think it's like 1 to 10, like only 1 out of every 10 arthritis patients have rheumatoid arthritis as opposed to the other 9 having osteoarthritis. Now, the difference between those 2, you have to understand that, and that may help you in, how you approach the treatment of it, is that the osteoarthritis is from mechanical wear and tear. Rheumatoid arthritis is more of an autoimmune response where the joints are being attacked by the body's own immune system. So that's the only other difference is that rheumatoid arthritis can start earlier in life, where osteoarthritis tends to be something that happens later in life. Now, outside of the world of pharmaceuticals, there are several good options. So, especially when you start combining anti-inflammatory herbs with analgesic herbs, the analgesic meaning pain relieving. And when you combine them, you can actually get quite a bit of relief. So I would include herbs to help reduce fluid retention as well, to help take pressure off of the joints. So in this case, I would suggest trying, let's say, a combination of Solomon seal, which is an herb that's well known for dealing with complaints of arthritis, joint problems, crepitus, and so on. White willow or meadowsweet or even birch bark. All of these contain salicin. Salicin, when metabolized in the body, becomes salicylic acid, and the synthesized form of that, acetylsalicylic acid, is the active ingredient in aspirin. So at least if you can get your hands on, and this is actually a number of plants, aspens and other trees that also have salicin in them, but white willow is probably the most commonly known.
Right.
Meadowsweet, another one, and birch bark. If you're living someplace in the northern states, that's an option for you as well. So a lot of the herbal recommendations also can sometimes depend on where you're living in the U.S. as well. Black cohosh is wonderful when you've got some muscle pain. I know it kind of gets pigeonholed, the sort of a woman's herb, but it's wonderful for aches and pains as well. Nettle tea to help release some of those excess fluids and maybe some edema. Cayenne, if you happen to grow cayenne peppers, or if let's say you go to the grocery store post-disaster and it's been raided full of food, I'm not positive that the spice section is going to be raided, that people are going to think, well, maybe I want to take cayenne home with me, but if you can get like red pepper flakes or something like that, you can get the capsaicin, which is known to reduce the experience of pain by dulling the nerve endings and reducing the body's experience of what they call substance P, which is a neurotransmitter that sends pain signals to the brain. Other herbs like ginger and turmeric, they generally don't grow naturally. They're not native to the U.S., but A lot of people do grow them in their gardens in some of the southern states or in pots in the northern states, and they're highly anti-inflammatory. If you're in the Southwest, you might be able to get your hands on yerba mansa. That can provide some incredible relief from inflammation.
What was that one? Say that one again.
Yerba mansa.
Yerba mansa. Okay.
And there's also prickly pear.
Okay.
There's meadow arnica as opposed to mountain arnica. A lot of people don't, consider growing arnica because, you have to live at a very high elevation. For mountain arnica, yes, absolutely. And it's actually an endangered plant, I believe, in Europe. But meadow arnica, on the other hand, will grow in any meadow. That you don't have to live on a mountain. And they're pretty much interchangeable as far as their actions. So, it's a very pretty plant to grow, a little yellow flower. Certainly you can, if you've got access to a meadow or you like to do some guerrilla gardening, you can certainly seed that out ahead of time to make sure that you have access to that prior to a disaster. Comfrey is so valuable anyway, and that's wonderful for a lot of aches and pains. So really there's a lot of options when it comes to pain, and it's going to really depend on maybe where you are in the country, what you have access to. But herbs offer a lot of options for pain management. You could also, if you have gelatin, you can take that as a supplement as well. It can help with some of your to help rebuild cartilage and so on, so forth.
Okay.
So there is that ahead of time, because if you know that you have a chronic illness, the time to deal with it is not after the disaster.
Right.
The time to deal with it is beforehand. So if you're thinking right now, well, gelatin and, to get the benefits out of that, and, you've got to start that ahead, you've got to do that over a long period of time. Well, then you should be starting right now. If you're trying to prevent, further deterioration and so on. So you don't wait until the disaster to start doing this.
Yeah. Don't wait for the disaster and then go, oh yeah, I remembered I need to put that together so that I was all set afterwards.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly. So it's just, if you know that you have a chronic illness, you can do what you can to improve the situation as much as you possibly can now, but then you need to plan ahead, either in your own garden, whether you grow things in pots in a window, or if you don't have any access to land, where is there land around you? And, maybe you could put some seeds out there that people aren't necessarily paying attention to.
So given some of the great resources that you've given us there, so if I came to you today and I have osteoarthritis, or, say my mother did, what would be a recommendation for a good mix of some, and I have access right now to, go down to the herb store and be able to buy those things in jars and things like that. So what would be your recommendation as far as a treatment for that goes?
Well, under, certain assumptions that she doesn't have any allergies to aspirin or anything else, and that there aren't other health issues to take into account.
Right, like high blood pressure or things like
all
that.
Of that sort of stuff. Yeah, exactly. Then Solomon seal would probably be my top pick. And what I would probably have you do is make a tincture, which is an extract using alcohol. And you just basically take a big jar and you're going to put all your herbs in there, and you're going to cover it with most likely vodka. If you have access to grain alcohol, sometimes they sell it as Everclear. You can use that. But but if you don't, then just use vodka. The vodka is part alcohol, part water. And if you're using dried herbs, you actually do need some water to get the water-soluble constituents out. Yep. So usually vodka is almost an ideal percentage of alcohol and water for most dried herbs. So just to keep things simple, if you're going to order herbs now, I might make a combination tincture of Solomon seal, white willow bark, maybe a little bit of red pepper flakes in there. You could also make capsules of turmeric and ginger. You could certainly make a tincture including yerba mansa. If you'd have to order that, and if that doesn't grow in your area, and I think yerba mansa, turmeric, ginger, Solomon seal, white willow bark, those are probably my favorites for that. As a topical, though, you can make an arnica salve.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You could make a salve with arnica, comfrey. This is a good place to put in some of those herbs like ginger and cayenne. You can also put in some St. John's wort infused oil in there as well, and often that can be very helpful to calming down the pain experience of it when you put the topical salve on there and you start working it in with your fingers and you get a little bit of massage there. The other thing is you got to keep the joint moving. A lot of people,
right,
when they have arthritis, they stop moving the joint. You got to keep moving it. I understand it's mechanical wear and tear, and I know that it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but the bottom line is that if you don't, it becomes stiff, and when that joint becomes stiff, you end up compounding the problem. So you do have to keep it moving, and absolutely stay hydrated. You've got to keep those joints well hydrated. So
well lubricated.
Yes. And the other thing I would say is if you can find a patch of nettle, stinging nettle, if there's two things you can do with that. One, you can allow the nettle to sting you. It contains formic acid, and this was used, the stings were used as an arthritis treatment going back to, well, at least the medieval period anyway. It's sort of the same thing as when people go for bee stings. It's called apitherapy, and they get bee stings intentionally. And of course, it hurts when it happens. And, you have the sting. I mean, this isn't, it's a painful,
right,
little
sting. Yeah, they hurt.
Yeah, they do. But once it starts to heal, all of a sudden it helps with that pain. People go for apitherapy for all sorts of things like MS and whatnot. But it can be very helpful also for arthritis, and nettles and their sting was used as a treatment for arthritis. But beyond that, when you cook it, it gets rid of it, negates the sting part of it. So, I mean, if you make tea, you're not going to get stung by it. But
right,
if you make a tea from that, it does help with the edema, and it does help also with inflammatory reactions. Now, if you've got something more like rheumatoid arthritis, that could be a big factor because you want to calm down that immune response. And there's nettle can be a natural antihistamine, so you want to calm down that reaction that the body's having.
Yeah. I've been studying a lot about nettle. Actually, I knew that it was very edible and can be a good survival plant.
It's excellent.
Man, the more I learn about it, the more impressed I am with it. And we're all like, "Oh, get rid of it! It stings you."
No.
This
is a complete protein. It's got a protein profile that's similar to eggs.
Right.
I mean, granted, it doesn't have the same grams of protein. I mean, you'd have to eat copious amounts of this, but you could certainly survive over a winter if you didn't have anything else. I mean, you'd have to eat a lot of it, but I mean, let's say you've got some of these, these survival packaged foods that are, well, I mean, look, they're borderline on their nutrition. I don't care how well they're packaged. They're borderline.
I agree.
They're calories. They're not nutritious.
And the sodium in them is incredible.
If you've got all that sodium, you're going to need something to help with the edema, and nettle's perfect for that.
Okay.
So. It's something that if that's what you're relying on, hopefully you're also stocking up a little bit on nettle, because that will help make up some of the nutritional deficiency end of things there, and help get rid of some of that sodium, because honestly they're calories. They're not really well balanced nutritionally. I don't care what company it
Right.
is. That's the trend. And the problem is that if you don't get the nutrition that your body is supposed to get, your immune function is going to be lowered, and then you're more at risk for other illnesses.
Right. Yeah. And that's not the good time to be that way.
No, definitely not.
Okay, so say we go and we make up our tincture of the Solomon seal with the white willow bark and the red pepper flakes. How much of that are we taking per day to see those symptoms, subside a little bit? Is that like 3 times a day? What's your recommendation there?
Okay. Well, first of all, when you're making it, I would probably they're not even amounts of those 3 herbs. I mean, mostly it would be the Solomon seal, the white willow bark, maybe some black cohosh in there, but those first 2 would be primarily the ones that I would have in there.
Okay.
The red pepper flakes would be, just sort of a, maybe like a quarter of that, or it wouldn't be the biggest part of it, just because
Right.
it is so hot. Anyway, the thing is, you steep that in the alcohol for 6 weeks. This is another reason why you can't wait until a disaster has happened to make up your medicine, if you're going to do this as a tincture. Otherwise, you're looking at making a cup of tea, and a lot of these teas, I probably wouldn't serve that tea to a guest,
Right.
at least not one that I want to come back. So
Yeah.
I have far nicer blends for that. But if you're making the tincture, you let it steep for 6 weeks, unless you know how to do percolation, which is more of an advanced method, and you need this glass percolation cone, and I can see that getting broken
Very easily, right.
Post disaster. So anyway, but we're just talking about very simple, basic. You got your hands, a neighbor knows how to moonshine or something, and you get your hands on your alcohol after the disaster or prior to a disaster, where you can just go to a store and buy your vodka. So you have that steeping for about 6 weeks, and then you strain it out, and then you bottle it up, and you have a little eyedropper, as your is how you dispense it. And normally these things would be maybe a standardized dose of somewhere between 30 to 60 drops 3 times a day, roughly. I mean, it's going to vary a little bit dosage wise on the situation, the person that you're dealing with, how large are they, how healthy are they, and so on. But sort of there's a range there. Let's say 30 to 60 drops 3 to 4 times a day, depending on circumstances.
Yeah, the size of the person will make a big difference. I know that one because I'm pretty small.
The size and the age.
Everything. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and the age. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and also with the herbs that do contain salicin, not only do you have to, be a little concerned where you're dealing with people who may be allergic to aspirin, but you also don't give that to children who have a fever. So
okay.
if it's just for pain, let's say they've hurt themselves or they have a sprain or something, you can give it to them for pain. But if you suspect that they have some type of an infection, when fever is a sign of infection, then you don't do that, because that's where, you can run the risk of Rye syndrome when you give aspirin to a child with an infection.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't recommend that. There's no evidence that would happen with an herb, but I'm not testing this out.
Right,
So,
better to be safe than sorry, especially when it comes to our kids.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to be the one to test that theory. So I'm just going to leave that. Well, because not all of the risks that come with aspirin transfer over to the herbs, but I don't want to test that one out.
Right.
For instance, aspirin can be very difficult on the stomach, whereas some of the herbs that contain salicin just in general don't produce that kind of reaction in the stomach. So some of the
that's because the buffers are still there, right? The buffers to the plant are still there, whereas when they take the aspirin out, they remove the buffers.
Well, the thing is that the plants are their own unique synergy of various chemicals. It's not like salicin is the only chemical that is in the white willow bark or the meadowsweet or whatever plant you're extracting it from. And white willow bark is going to be different than meadowsweet, which is going to be different than birch bark, and because they're all their own unique thing. But with acetyl salicylic acid, one, it's synthesized. It's there in far greater amounts than you find in the herbs, which doesn't mean that the herbs are weaker. Actually, I think they work better than the aspirin. They take a little longer to kick in with like the white willow bark is what I'm talking about. And it takes just maybe an extra 5-10 minutes or so for it to start to kick in. But when it does, it seems to last longer and it works a little bit more thoroughly, in my opinion. I've had to use it quite often, so that's how it affects me. And a lot of clients that I've had they prefer how that works better to aspirin. So I would think that the reason why is because it's not the only active ingredient. There's other chemicals involved there as well, whereas aspirin has to rely just on the one chemical, so therefore needs it in greater amounts. And because it needs to be there in greater amounts to create that reaction, that is where I believe the risks come in.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, that brings us right into our next question and our last question of the day is, what are some of the dangers that we need to be aware of? So we've talked about a lot of them, but is there anything like specifically with, I know it's not really with the nettle, but with, say, the white willow, could you basically like overdo it too much or the Solomon seal? Could you take, too many drops, basically? If you put 200 in a cup and gave it to somebody, what kind of effect is that going to have?
Well, I don't know, I mean, if they did that, that seems sort of like the mindset of if a little is good, then more is better.
Right.
And,
some people have that mindset, though.
You know what? And to them, I would just say, hey, this is on you. Whatever if there's a standard dose with most herbs. There are some that are low dose herbs that need to be. There are certain herbs that really should be kept to lower dosages. But for the most part, 30, 40, 60 drops. Really, we're talking about an eyedropper. We're talking about very small amounts, really.
Right.
I don't know, you might have an upset stomach for the most part. Some people may end up with a headache or whatnot for the most part. Right. It's not that just because it's natural, it's safe, because there are so many factors, and without knowing someone's, health history or anything like that. Right. I really wouldn't know. But I mean, there are certain things like, if you know that someone already has high blood pressure, you don't want to give them herbs that increase high blood pressure. If they have low blood pressure, you don't want to give them a vasodilator. You don't, if they have a problem with where they make too many blood clots, then maybe if they have a fever, you don't want to give them yarrow, because yarrow can help to control and stop bleeding. So you kind of need to know their health background. And so it's important that if you're going to take it upon yourself to be the health person among your group, whether your group is, just a family or a mutual support group or your preparedness group, whatever you call it,
right.
However many people that is, if you're the one who's taking that on, then you need to also then get a health history from them and get a background from them, and they have to be comfortable telling you about what's going on with their health and their family histories and so on. That way it'll help you plan, but also so that you don't give something that's relatively benign to 90% of the population, but not to like 10% of the population. So
and that would be the one you'd pick, of course.
Right, of course, because that's just how things go.
That's just Murphy's Law right there.
Right, exactly. So.
All righty, well, that wraps it up. You've given us some great advice on how to handle our arthritis right now, because, like I said, this is a problem that affects so many people. That's why I really wanted to go into it with you. And then in your book that you have out, do you discuss this topic as well, and they can get some remedies and stuff there?
Absolutely. I discuss both acute and chronic illness. So obviously I was writing it for post-disaster, but certainly you could use that beforehand.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, I'll go ahead and we'll have that link in our show notes so everybody can go over there and get started on these remedies right now, because as you say, you don't want to wait. till it's too late, and then go, oh, remember that girl was talking about that? I really should have paid attention. So let's start paying attention now. Well, thank you very much for being with us today, Kat. I really appreciate you coming in and spending your time with me, and I'm sure our listeners do as well.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
A big shout out to Kat Ellis for having appeared on the show. It was so great to have her with us. And like I say, I really had so many takeaways from our conversation and so many great things to research now and check out that it really was a truly amazing experience. So I highly suggest you head on over to her website at www.herbalprepper.com. And of course, I will have a link to her website from the show notes. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm looking forward to having you back here next week when we get to hear Chapter 6 of Day After Disaster. As always, remember, dream, survive, thrive.
Thank you for joining Sarah for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster at www.author.sarahfhathaway.com. If you love this podcast, please head over to iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.